6 former law enforcement officers in Mississippi, Rankin County, have pled guilty to federal civil rights violations in regard to an abusive case where they just beat 2 black men. The officers, Brett McAlpin, Jeffrey Middleton, Christian Dedmon, Leonard Elward, Daniel Updyke, and Joshua Hartfield, made their initial court appearances for their involvement in the beating and sexual assault of Michael, Corey, Jenkins, and Eddie Parker. The officers face charges of conspiracy against rights, deprivation of rights under the court of law, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and obstruction of justice. Additional charges of using firearms during the act of violence have been brought against Dedmon and Elward, which carry a potential life sentence if convicted. Jenkins and Parker filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Rankin County seeking $40 million in damages. This is, again, a story that we've been covering in a significant way, talking to the attorneys for the individuals involved. It is really a stunning case out of Mississippi. And again, and let me just read this here. This was the story from WLBT. It says 6 former Rankin County law enforcement officers walked into the federal courthouse in downtown Jackson as free men on Thursday. They were later escorted out of Judge Tom Lee's courtroom one by one in handcuffs and shackles in the custody of the U.S. Marshal's Office. Joining us right now to talk about this is Kareem Muhammad, spokesman for the Justice Party of Mississippi. Kareem, glad to have you on the show. First and foremost, also joined by John Barnett, national civil rights activist as well. Glad to have both of you. John is out of Charlotte. John, I want to start with you. We covered this story from day one. Malik Zulu Shabazz was on the show talking about what happened here, and this was just stunning and shocking, this beating, and the fact that these 2 brothers, the fact that they're still living is still what's stunning. I mean, they could have been absolutely murdered, and these cops would have concocted a story to get away with it.
That's correct. That's correct. Mr. Martin, and thank you for all your help, your support. Your show has allowed us to get the word out to the masses of the people. If you were in court today, Mr. Martin, me and my attorney was just looking at each other over and over again. Like, we didn't know about this. We didn't know this happened. It's the worst thing I've ever seen in 17 years of civil rights. I mean, I got to give you these 2 points. To know that they put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger and it didn't work, and then pulled it a second time. And once they realized that it happened, apparently they said it was a mistake, they all huddled on the back porch and put the story together, and then came back in and started planting guns and planting meth inside the house that they already had in their car, just in case an incident like this would happen. But today, as historically we've seen slaves being shackled and brought to America, today I've seen 6 cops in a federal courthouse be shackled, and handcuffed, and taken in the back. And it still isn't enough, because since we've been in Mississippi for the last 2 months, there's more cases that's popped up. I'm sure Mr. Kareem can talk about that. But it's so much, Mr. Martin, take 3 shows, because so much stuff was going on with this case that we didn't even know, that the DOG was reading, the prosecutors was reading this stuff out to us. I mean, it was just shocking. It's totally shocking.
Kareem?
Yes. Thank you again as well, Mr. Martin, for allowing us with this opportunity. We just want to first definitely say that we thank Attorney Malik Shabazz, along with Attorney Trent Walker, for believing in us and taking the lead in this legislation, part of this legal battle that we had. We know this is just one journey toward our continuous journey of justice for those whose names are known and unknown. But we remember in '64 when they pulled James Chaney and Michael Schroner and Andrew Goodman from the dirt that they were buried in. Before that, they had brought many young black men from the swamp that they never talked about. And so the same thing's going on here in Mississippi. This is an ongoing struggle that we have to get justice for our people. our great pioneer, Thurgood Marshall, said that the white Klansmen used to wear white robes, now they're wearing black robes. But we say today that we found out when we was in that courtroom that Klansmen are wearing blue robes now, and they're hiding not behind white sheets, behind badges.
I'm going to panel candidates. I mean, that really is what we are looking at. I mean, when we look at the details here, when we have Malik on and describing it is absolutely shocking and stunning. But this is also quite fast. How fast this thing moved for them to go to federal court and plead guilty.
Yes, and I think, again, back to your show contributing to this, getting the message out. We were on those stations, I won't plug them, but we're voting. CNN, the New York Times is outside now, Washington Post. I think Mississippi was not ready for outside resources. And that's why you're so important. I subscribe and I send money to you every month because it's important that shows like yours and others get the message out.
I appreciate it.
Most definitely, I'm a proud subscriber.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that it's important that outside resources come in. I tell people all the time, Benjamin Crump, good friend of mine, Attorney Crump is from Florida, but he flew to Minneapolis, sued, got his suitcase and went back home. Johnny Cochran was in Los Angeles, California, flew into New York City for Luima, won $7 million after he was sodomized by the police department, and then he went back to Los Angeles. So sometimes it's key because sometimes lawyers inside the city that you work in and inside the state don't want to sue.
That's
they
right.
don't want to help as much as they should because they live here and they got to eat here. So I thank God for Attorney Malik Shabazz again from being on the outside. He's not from here. He's from Maryland.
But his family's from Mississippi.
That's fair. His family's from here.
That's right.
And we're doing this in the memory of spirit of Edgar Evers, you know.
That's right. We're 60 years.
But I want to add, Mr. Martin, I found out today that out of these 6 dumb cops, and I'm going to call them the dumbest cops in Mississippi, 5 have a high school diploma and 1 has a college degree. And he probably barely got that. So I would say that if a doctor works on us and he needs a degree, if a dentist works on our teeth and they need a degree, some of these guys need a degree. These guys got 5 high school diplomas. And I'm almost thinking they will see a D- students. And so that's something we have to.
Candace, Candace Kelly.
Well, you know, it makes me think of the fact that the age of these men, 27 to 52, according to the Department of Justice, these are men who what they did was so egregious that they went ahead and pled guilty. That is a serious aberration from what we are used to, number one. Number two, you have to think what did happen exactly between the point where they were sworn in and took their oath to protect and serve to this day where they decided to label themselves a goon squad and go and, as you said, shoot somebody in the face, agree to beat them where they wouldn't show in their mugshot, pour alcohol on them, syrup and milk, and then ask them to go wash off the evidence. What type of police officer does that? And what happened in that space to where they took their oath to that day? And I'm wondering from the both of you, what you think is going on inside, because some indoctrination was taking place that was completely against the grain of when they put up their hands and said, I will protect and serve. I do think a lot of it has to do with education. Often the less you have, the more vulnerable you are to just dumb ideas. These were probably people who were online a lot, vulnerable, indoctrinated by the algorithm. You know, all of a sudden, you know, the white supremacy in them rose up and then they took it out in this way. But I am wondering from you in terms of what you think is going on in that station or that precinct with those officers.
Absolutely. If I may, is that again, is that what I'm saying is that this is not nothing new. This is Mississippi. And again, I will refer back to one of our older pioneers, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in his book, Message to the Black Man. He reprinted the letter that was sent to him by J.D. Stone, clansman of that time. And the letter was sent to the New York police chief. And he was asked his police chief to allow him to let his Klansmen wear police uniforms. Secondly, I want to say that just as George Floyd took his last breath, and when he said, I can't breathe, and Freddie took his last breath, and he said, I can't breathe. We have a young man here, Damian Cameron, whose mother said that when he was taking his last breath, he said the same thing, I can't breathe. Why am I saying that? Because what we have found out that the police department, these police officers are being trained overseas in Israel, and they're being taught how to treat us in the black community, how to come to us and do certain things. And so this is a Teamster organization of black righteous supremacist police officers. This is not just in Mississippi. That's why I made the mention. This is Minneapolis. This is in New York City. This is throughout the country.
And then you talk about
Reese.
Absolutely, but you got to keep in mind, just because they do oath, don't mean that it's not in their DNA. They're just
that's right.
Footsteps of their forefathers.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Reese, go ahead.
I was curious to know, I know there was an investigation that found that these officers had been involved in other violent and then sometimes fatal encounters with black men. Is there any indication that the cases that they were involved in are getting a second look, knowing that they planted evidence in this case? And my other question is, what happened to the charges for your clients in terms of were those charges that were trumped up dropped and expunged from their records?
Yes, those charges were dropped, to my understanding. Yeah. Those charges were dropped. And also, yes, to your first point, Damian Cameron is two of the 6 officers was responsible for his death. So absolutely, it's definitely a pattern that's been going on for a long period of time.
And if you see, I'm holding a book now that was written by a brother named Brother Charles Muhammad. His son was murdered in 1991. His wife was the president of the NAACP, and he was the minister of the at that time. And his son was arrested in Rankin County. And within 12 hours, he had been sent over to Simpson County, where the other officer that was a part of this was from. And within 12 hours, he was lynched. And so in that...
And hung inside the jail, man.
Inside the jail. And so Chuck Ray Lumumba, who we have lost, used to be the mayor here, along with others, researched and found out that there were many cases of young black men being hung the same way. And so again, we're saying this is Mississippi. But what we are thankful for is that the Department of Justice is now creating an investigation in Rankin County, and they are asking those that have been a victim of this to come forward. And we believe that in a few days, a lot more will come forward.
And Mr. Martin, I also want to add that not only did they get charges, did they plead guilty to these charges today, the DOJ Attorney General is going forth with state charges as well. So just the way they did R. Kelly, they're doing the same thing these cops over here right across the street from us.
And the last point that we want to make, of course, at the bottom end of, we know that the major reason why this is being out front is because of grassroots organizing. It's because we decided that we would not take anymore, that we kept going out. We started out with 1 or 2 of us, then 4 or 5 of us, then 10 of us, then 20 of us, then 40 of us. And we decided to let them know that we would not stop. And because of that, along with attorneys,
that's right,
we are where we are today.
That's right. I told them we like Bebe's kids. We don't die, we multiply.
Greg Carr.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, brothers Muhammad and Martin. And I want to ask you a question, kind of following along or as it relates to Rankin County. Are these guys, I mean, they're obviously going to be punished. At least we expect they'll be punished, but we know they're now outliers, as you said, Brother Muhammad. This is systemic, this is structural, we know it well. Do we run the risk of, well, let me rephrase this. How do we attack the structural nature of this continuing threat to black life, particularly given the fact that the brothers are suing, I guess it's still active, they are suing for perhaps asking for $400 million from Rankin County. Of course, we know, to go back to the story that Roland was covering a minute ago about Texas A&M, that's going to come out of taxpayer pockets if we do. That ultimately convicting a handful of racists in a racist system, draining public dollars, How do we approach uprooting this systemically? And tell us a little bit about Rankin County and why, in a county in which the initial prompt, I guess, for this latest act by this goon squad was somebody calling and saying that black people were living in a house with a white woman. What is it about Rankin County? Is Rankin County an outlier, or is that just par for the course of Mississippi as well?
I'll let Brother Kareem answer about Rankin County because he's from this general area. But to your first question in reference to what do we do in reference to, is this going to continue to happen? I think the answer is that we need to have more stern punishment. The mass of cops that have shot black men in this country, you can probably add the years up on one hand. So I think the key is that if I was to shoot a precious white female in her mouth, then I would not be getting some type of plea bargain. They're going to go all out. They're going to try to get 20, 30 years. This is attempted murder. We don't even have hate crime on this list, to my understanding. We don't have hate crime. We got 13 counts. No hate crime. They used the N-word and then they put a gun in his mouth and they shot him. That's a hate crime. So there's a lot of things I think they slipped through the cracks. I think we need to punish them to the fullest extent. And I'm really upset. I thought we was getting ready for a trial. I didn't want a plea bargain. You know why? Because plea bargain means it minimizes the punishment. Whereas, for example, you get like 10 years for a charge, where if you take it to trial and you lose, you get 20 to 25. So I wish they had a fault. Now, 6 of the officers over here, 2 have Afro-American lawyers, and I know they feeling bad right now. So I'll let him elaborate on Rankin County.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, Rankin County, you can think of Ferguson. It's the same way. Predominantly white police officers in 2020 and 2023, which should be unheard of. But that's the way. It's a white county. And the language that they said during the time of accustoming those individuals in the home, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, which was get out of here. Go back to Jackson, Mississippi, where there's all blacks at. Pearl, Mississippi, all those are white counties. And at one time, see, one thing about Mississippi, it has never been a sundown town because black people knew where to go and they knew where not to go. Whereas up north, they had to have sundown town at a certain time. You knew not to go down there. But in Mississippi, it was always been a borderline. And so Rankin County has always been like that. And so that is the culture of that area. But when we're talking about opportunity, we have an opportunity now for black Mississippians to recognize that if we stand up for our own selves, then now we can begin to fight this systematic system of white supremacy, not just in the police department, but in legislation and other departments that are outright controlling this system.
All right, gentlemen, we appreciate all that you have done, and we will continue to monitor this case and others. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.